Here, having a major session.
Hello, I'm Ashley Johnner. I am the Director of Advocacy at Sacred Pike Resource Center, and this is my boss. I'm her teammate at the Sacred Pike Resource Center, Cheryl Perry, Executive Director.
Thank you so much, ladies. If you see, the panel was really diverse and was really intentional because this is a BIPOC event, and we're about to, we just wanted to make the panelists as diverse as we can. So we're going to jump straight into the questions, lady, and whoever can take answer the first question. So how did the film relate to your experience or knowledge in home buying? And how can you use the knowledge learned in the movie to help people overcome the obstacles they face in home buying? Anybody can go for it. How did you relate to the film?
I guess on multiple levels. I think being initially when I came, so I'm originally African, I'm from Zimbabwe. And I think when I always thought about the American dream before I moved here, it was definitely through rose-colored glasses. And then I got here and I was like, oh, hold on, this is not what I thought it was. And I think some of that was just not fully, because I wasn't here, but just not being fully immersed in or fully understanding the system or the history behind the system. And they're just coming in like, oh, it should be this, just to find out that it wasn't that. And I was in Massachusetts first for about almost 2 years before I came to North Dakota. And just that shift from living in Massachusetts to living in North Dakota was a massive difference, just massive culture shock. And so I think, I think it was, the film was heavy, but I've also have experienced some of that, or like in going to start to ask questions about buying our home, or even putting that on my radar. I think I have come up against some of those same barriers, but I just didn't understand it at the time to be like a lot more systematic than it was. I was like, oh, it's just a me issue. And then I think just the longer I've lived here, the positions I've held, I'm like, oh, no. This is bigger than just a me issue. It's a system problem.
Yes, lady, any follow-up to that? How did you see the film? I know there were just some buzzwords thrown around like redlining and a lot of stuff happening in between. Yeah, I know it's heavy. That's good.
Okay, sorry. So, the Sacred Pike Resource Center, our overall goal has always been advocacy for Native American people in the Bismarck, Mandan, Lincoln community. And so, we do that through what's called councils, community councils, where we invite Native people, community members in to discuss issues that pertain to things that are important to them. One of the councils that we have always operated is the Housing Council. And Ashley chairs the council, staffs the council, and we have been working on quite a few initiatives to address housing. I hope nobody was surprised at this film. I hope nobody was shocked. I don't think so. I mean, we're usually preaching to the choir. But that's one of our challenges is, I noticed even in the film, some of the people that were speaking and trying to talk about systemic challenges to homeownership were speaking to some very small crowds. And that's typical of trying to make systemic change, is that you have a few people who beat the drum very hard, and then by and large the majority of your community keeps their head in the sand about these challenges and keeps the blinders on about how systemic these issues are, and that they're not just individual issues, challenges. So I appreciated that, the comment that is, buying a home is not an individual thing. In America, we tend to think that it's an individual thing. Oh, I'm a person that needs a home, so I'm gonna go buy a home, and it's me and the realtor and finding a home. And that's not what it is at all. It's very much a system that has a lot to do with politics, has a lot to do with economy, has a lot to do with value systems and perceptions of other. So I think the film did a really good job of bringing all of that up.
Karen, I'm going to jump to you. We heard a lot tonight about policy and so much about inequality when we were watching the movie. So I wanted to ask, what role do you think community organizations and academia, since you're part of the academia, can play in creating or offering social safety net, and how can social safety net change the cycle of poverty the way it is, especially when it comes to building generational wealth with housing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I do in my classes, I teach sociology courses, and we have the opportunity to talk about social and systemic inequality all the time. And so I always tell my students, you can't do everything, but you can do something. So find something that you can start with and work there. And so one of the things, the social policies, or I guess like not even a legitimate policy, but just an attitude or an orientation, is moving from an orientation of scarcity towards one of plenty. So when we have a scarcity mindset, we think that the resources are limited and there's not enough for everybody, so we need to grab what we can and protect it for ourselves. But if we shift our mindset, like this is an incredibly wealthy nation and our world has so many resources and there is enough for everybody, but it means some of us need to take less. And that might mean saying yes to affordable housing being built in your neighborhood, even if it means that your housing value might decrease versus if they build 5,000 square foot houses with high housing values. So turning from thinking of what can I get to protect myself to how can I invest in my community, because when my neighbors are stable, that means my schools are going to be more stable and the economic opportunities are going to be better off. So investing in other people, invest in ourselves as well. I think at like the local, state, and federal level, there are ways to invest specifically in lower income families. But yeah, I think turning from that attitude of scarcity towards one of plenty and investing in others is probably one of the first steps.
Okay, Melanie, I was actually looking at, she heard her mic as if she wanted to have a follow-up. Jasmine, sorry. It looked like you wanted to have a follow-up or something. But Melanie, I wanted to ask you, I know we had a conversation all week long about you facing homelessness, and it goes from those stages, right? You face homelessness, you find a safe space for you, where you move in, and all of us as it is, we want to build that generational wealth to pass on, which is through the beauty of owning a home yourself. So I wanted to ask you, like, how have your experience with homelessness shaped like your understanding when it comes to barriers? And I know we also had a conversation about how you watching your parents like getting into home buying and all of that. How has like that experience shaped your idea of barriers to home or to access to fair housing, and how do you like want to use that to affect change, especially in the work you do?
Yeah, so I've cycled in and out of being unhoused since before I can remember, up to most recently 2021, after COVID hit, and being doubled up, and other impacts that oppressive systems have created for me to overcome. And so along that journey, being socially aware of the things and having the words and the tools to be able to speak to these things was something I didn't always have. And so thinking about that, how that shifted who I am today and my experiences, I can't stop but think that it happened long before me, the forced removal and the disposition of my family to the land. And what that looks like, what's that look like upon colonization, upon contact, and how that intergenerational trauma has shown itself within my family nucleus, and the work that I've had to do. So I think looking into that history, looking into the depths of the things we faced and the things we've gone through, has definitely shaped who I am and how I've experienced all of these impacts and these barriers. I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
Yeah, so and I definitely think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
So
can I
share-
just add, I guess, I think it's also a lot harder to dig yourself out of that place than just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I was unhoused too, as a single mom, so also trying to figure out how do I put a roof over my head, and it's me and these 3 kids, how do I do it? And I know one of the things that drove me crazy was kind of that mentality of somehow you did this to yourself. No, it's life, it's circumstance, right? And that idea of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but without, I think you kind of said it, but where there isn't that sense, or there wasn't, I didn't feel at the time, that sense of community of well, we get it, you're going through a moment right now, but I can help you. It was very much oh, no, I gotta preserve myself, I can't extend that. And I think a lot of that still happens, and sometimes it's that attitude of oh, well, just dig yourself out of it. Great, but I'm also reaching out for help to try and figure that out. Once you're there, that gap from bottom to figuring it out is a lot longer and harder, I think, than people think, or they expect that, oh, well, in 3 months you should have kind of figured it out. And I think it's also important to understand that just with things in our history, things in our past, the way the system is set up is that it is not a direct path from unhoused to you have a home, right? I'm there now, but it's also taken me almost a decade to get there. So.
I'm going to follow up with you again with that, Jasmine. I know you completely broken into our next conversation, which is your new home buyer. Congratulations. And you and I, we went through the process at the same time. And for me, I think one of the things I was talking to Bri about it was even not knowing what my credit score was. Basic things like credit score, moving to America and trying to understand the system, knowing what a basic credit score is. And I remember when my husband, he was so stuck on covenants. When we heard something about covenants, he decided to completely ask our realtor, every house we saw, is there a racial covenant on this? Because that was his first time experiencing a word like that, right? So for you, what were some, can you share some of the crucial barriers you encountered during your home buying process, and how did you navigate through them?
Yeah, I think the biggest one was education, especially just coming from outside of the country too, and coming into the system, was that I didn't fully understand credit or how that worked necessarily. Of course, I had an idea of the concept of credit, but it wasn't. I don't think I really understood what that was, and so I think for many years before, I kind of made bad decisions just because I didn't fully understand it, or it wasn't fully explained, or just the idea of oh, get a credit card, it'll be fun, it's extra money. No, it ain't. No, it ain't. Or, you know, hey, what was the other one that I had? Like, no, this is good debt. It wasn't, like, you know, it was dumb stuff, it was consumer debt. There's not a single thing good about that kind of debt. So I think it was the beginning of my path, and I would say it was maybe 5 years when I was really like educating myself on, okay, what is credit? How do I use credit? How does that, you know, pertain to home buying? Okay, my credit right now is negative 780, okay? I don't know how that number exists, but that's where I'm at. How do I start to, like what steps do I need to do? So I think a big thing was educating myself, but then also connecting with people, either other people that had been through the process, bought homes, or in a similar situation. You know, I'm a single mom, and so like even just connecting with other single moms that have had to navigate the process and they bought a house, and kind of asking how they walked through it. And then I think also, I had a good lender, but I think I think I had enough education to ask the right questions of my lender, I should say that. I think by the time I got there, I had done enough work to ask the right questions, to be like, okay, that is not a loan I want, or how does this work? And things like that. So I think education is a big piece, especially for people that, you know, I'll scratch that, because even my kids, even for people born here, I think it's not very clear. It's just like chase this dream, chase the American dream, buy a home, but nobody's actually educating our youth on like what, in a practical sense, what does that mean? Like, what does that responsibility entail? What do you have to do to build your credit, maintain your credit? What is credit? So I think a lot more education needs to happen than we have. So yeah, I think just being louder about that, because I think that for me was the key, was that I had better education around it, so I could ask better questions, and then I could make better decisions rather than, you know, oh, it's the dream, so just get the house that you can afford. You know, I'm like, I think not, ma'am. Like, yeah, I'm approved for that, but also, can we look at this one that's 50K cheaper, you know? So.
Sis Melanie, I saw you.
I was gonna ask to piggyback off that, and I think, like, I really resonate with what Jenna said. So I'm a renter. I have, again, cycled through being unhoused, you know, throughout my lifetime. And my first and only experience with home ownership was back in 2005 when my parents bought a house out in Lincoln, North Dakota. And watching them through that process, I came back originally to be with my parents, raise the kids, and help raise my sister's kids. So watching them move from a trailer court where there was just an immense stress and pressure of discrimination, to trying to purchase a home, to create a safer place for their grandchildren to live, was really eye-opening for me. And I was in my mid-20s, early 20s, so I was young. I was really young. But so in watching that, I remember specifically them having conversations at the table, and my mom just being utterly stressed and depleted, even thinking about where, I don't even know what to do. Let's look into this. What does this look like here in this area? Again, they raised us out in the Twin Cities. And so I think like the financial literacy piece, right, and having access to that is crucial. Like watching my parents not have that and go looking for those resources that at the time weren't available. And then being just shut down and just being completely shut down, or being told you gotta do this, and this with no support. And so that community resource, right, and that community care and like indigenous knowledge that we have in caring and providing and supporting one another. Like, I think that was truly eye-opening for me. And once that door was open, that, oh, we have this house, yes, it's gonna be so much better. You know, it wasn't, I remember the day of when we moved our final haul from that, from the U-Haul out to Lincoln, I'm pulling up. And me and my little brother, you know, rest in peace, we were unloading, and my parents were like, they had pizza, there was somebody at the door. It was a great day, right? It was life-changing. And in my eyes, it's just an exciting day. And I remember specifically coming in with a bag, and my mother is like, excuse me, what did you just say? And to this day, I don't know what was said. And the lady just kind of like pushed the keys in my mother's hand. And my dad looks at her and he's like, don't get bent out of shape, Cheryl. And if you know my mother, she'll take nothing. You know, she's a very strong woman. And so she was really like, oh no, we're gonna speak about this. I didn't just spend all of my money for my family to have a safe home and be met with this already, or something of that. Again, it was, you know, a long time ago. But I remember specifically my father saying, you know, Cheryl, what are we to expect? We're living in a town named after Abraham Lincoln on Benteen Drive. So that right there lets us know like what we should expect. So it's all right, let's just go. Come on, you kids, let's, you know, and go on through our day. And so my father had this profound support and skill to stand with my mother as she advocated and spoke up to these things. And he had this like just phenomenal balance on caring or addressing these issues. And so I think like me seeing that and having my little brother at the exact same time who was 10 years younger than me, seeing that, and we both looked at each other and we were like, whoa. You know, and then as the time went on, the pull-ups that they would do to come and check on the home and to see if everything was okay, the phone calls that they would get, the stress of it. And my father got cancer in the pituitary gland. It might not be a tumor in the pituitary gland. It was many, many years ago. And he couldn't work anymore. And so my mother was retired. She worked in family reunification and social work in the Twin Cities, right in our community. And so her just having no income and us having to figure this out on top of the medical bills we have, on top of the discrimination and being put under scrutiny, and where we were trying to create a safe space, it really left me with like, wow, there's no hope. Where are we gonna go? What are we gonna do? So I just wanted to, I think I'll leave it at that, but like those were our realities. Not having that access to financial literacy, not having the resources at that time to support us through what that looks like. And yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Sis Ashley, I want to come up to you with the conversation you and I we had at office when we had the Facebook Live conversation. And one of the things you said during that conversation was about most of the people you see, they're just trying to get a home, a roof over their head. Can you speak a little bit on that,
Yes.
especially watching this?
Yeah, so what we were talking about was barriers to home owning. And I feel like oftentimes in my position, I'm a social worker, and my experience is outreach on the streets and helping individuals who are unhoused come off the streets. And so, and having a safe place to lay their head every night. And I believe like a lot of stuff that we do at Sacred Pipe is that foundational work. It's not necessarily home ownership all the time where we're at. We meet people where they're at, and oftentimes the biggest challenge is just finding affordable rent and compassionate landlords in our community who are willing to work with individuals who may not have that credit that we talked about, may not have the rental experience or the desired income or even accepting housing. And so oftentimes the work that I do is more of that foundational piece of simply just coming off of living outside.
How I wanted to bring that in just to bring in what you guys do again at Sacred Vibes, which Michelle, we love you at our office. Just wanted to put that out. Thank you for the work you do for the community. So again, can you tell us about just specific housing issues you see with the work you do, and also how at the advocacy work you guys are doing and the letter writing is helping to address these issues, and what can we do as community members to just advance that? I've been in some of those council meetings and they're amazing. So can you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about it and then I'll let Cheryl talk a little bit. So yeah, we do letter writing campaigns where we do a call to action at Sacred Pipe, and we invite community members to come and share their housing experience in the community. And what we do on our end is provide a safe space for that to be heard. And then we funnel those letters to people in the government system. So we did a letter writing campaign in December and sent those off to the city of Bismarck, mayor, the city of Mandan, legislative council, and the commissioners in Bismarck and Mandan. And in doing so, we have heard back from senators, commissioners, and mayors, and we've been having those ongoing conversations. And what's really important for us at Sacred Pipe is to let the people that we serve know that their voices are really important, and we want to make sure that their voices are heard, and that when they are heard, it can create some change. So not only are Cheryl and I in on those conversations and in those meetings, we invite members of our councils, specifically Housing Council, to join us in those conversations and be able to speak and also see what those conversations look like. And so that's some of the advocacy work that we're doing recently, and working on speaking with senators on bills that would protect renters in our communities from egregious practices in our renting world. We're also kind of in the crawl phase. We're building up our Tenants' Rights Association, and so this was kind of in the works before I came. Sure, I can talk a little bit more about it, but we believe in power in numbers, and so when we have our housing councils and we have our call to action, and when we speak to our community through social media, we encourage people to come and sign up to be a part of our Tenants' Rights Association, and in efforts to make more of an impact when we are doing advocacy work, and being able to have a body in our community that can share their experiences, that they understand. We depend on our community members to come in and share those experiences with us, so that we can in turn try to create some change. And so we're developing our Tenants' Rights Association as we speak every day, and we're trying to have a space for our Native community members to be a part of something large to create change in our community.
So there are no other tenants' rights associations as far as we know in the state of North Dakota. And I say that because housing is a big issue. It's a huge issue. Fargo has a lot of same issues that we have. Minot, there's just no affordable housing. So it's not just a Native American issue, but Native people, as usual, we are the miners' canary. And so we experience the most egregious issues in housing. And so this is kind of why we're trying to build the power of numbers, a Native American Tenants' Right, or the Urban Tribal Tenants' Rights Association, to bring people together to realize that they're not alone. Because I think that's one of the things that happens, and we have to acknowledge, I think it's important for all of us to acknowledge the power of narratives, the power of the story. Because the narrative here in North Dakota is that, as we said, pull yourselves up by your bootstraps. Oh, we're just we're all individuals and we all have that ability, that highly individualistic culture that's in North Dakota that says, oh, we just all do this ourselves, which is, excuse my language, bullshit. Because it's all done on free land that was, taken from Native people. So the power of the narrative, especially when it comes to Native American people that we serve, is that Native people, we deserve secondhand things. So secondhand homes, secondhand apartments, old trailers, old broken down neighborhoods. And that's what we deserve. That's our place. So look at the stage behind me. What flags do you see? Where are the tribal flags? What space do they take up? Are we not tribal sovereign nations? Are we not have a government-to-government relationship with the United States and the state of North Dakota? Something as simple as where your flags are placed on a stage reinforces that narrative of North Dakota. That narrative in North Dakota that Native Americans, we lost. Get over and stay in your little corner. Be happy with the substandard housing that you have. And that's what we need to change in the state. Because people are okay with it. The film talked about this idea of racial inequality. That's part of it, certainly, but it's more about income, because there are certainly a lot of poor whites that also show up at our housing council meetings, and they share the same stories, the same challenges with the landlords. We have never done financial literacy at Sacred Pipe Resource Center, because I think it's an insult to our people, because I'm sure these ladies paid months and months and years of rent in an apartment before they moved into a house. But guess what the industry doesn't include when they factor in your credit scores? Rent. They don't factor that in at all. Now, why is that? That's a fault of the system. So that's what I said earlier, home ownership is not an individual thing. So home ownership, in owning homes, you want to hold these individuals accountable. Well, they've been accountable. It's the system that's not accountable, because it isn't recognizing that they have financial literacy. They've been paying rent. And a lot of times, a lot of them have been paying it without credit. So they've been paying it in the cash system. They are far more responsible with their money than someone that can use credit. But that's not factored into a housing system. And we don't talk about those things. We wanted our governor, or our mayor, we went into a meeting with our mayor and he said, oh, homeless people want to be homeless. And we had two very capable, intelligent, beautiful community members, Native community members, who were homeless. And so the insult was there, that homelessness is somehow a failure on their part and not a failure of the system that we live in. And in North Dakota, in Bismarck, we need to open our eyes and work together to resolve that, because it isn't an individual issue. It isn't an individual's failure, and it isn't an individual's responsibility to get good housing. It is our system. So, try as we might, it's an uphill battle that we do every day, and we prop each other up all the time. But that's what we have to do, because it is an uphill battle. We look at the city of Bismarck, where all these men in suits, they want development. They want to go north. They want to go east. They want to develop west. You know where they don't want to develop? Downtown, where all the crappy housing is. So those are the things that we need to address, and as a collective, not as individuals. And that's what we try to do, try to raise as many voices as we can. We have some beautiful stories and people with some very strong voices, and we try to uplift those voices and get people to listen, because they're the ones who suffer from these consequences of a lot of failed policies in North Dakota and Bismarck.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, got on my soapbox.
That was a lot to digest. Thank you. Karen, when we were having this conversation, you said something about us not having, so this question goes to everybody. This is our final closing question, actually. You said something about us not having enough data, especially that shows like the segregation, like redlining maps. We really don't have redlining maps like the other cities, big cities where redlining was really established. And I was just listening to Cheryl like talk about the way as segregation shows up in our community, and also like we just for the group too, we have a lot of information on our website. So you go to like Plainsville Housing Center, please try to read out some of the materials we have on there. We have a lot of material. So my last question will be, considering like everything we've shared tonight, what actions or what steps do you think as individuals, as communities, as policymakers we can take to like promote fair housing and equitable access to housing for all? And how can this collaborative effort between community organizations, academias, government agencies, and also just us like create lasting solutions to not end up with a city like Baltimore, even though we have our own problems over here?
Well, there's always grounds up work and there's top down work, and I think we need both of those. So we can be welcoming to our neighbors. We can, when we meet a new neighbor, bring them something to eat and invite them over to our place. We can try to get to know the people in our neighborhoods and make them feel welcome. But we can also, I love, the letter writing and advocating, but knowing the policies of different candidates and talking to them and telling them what your concerns are and voting for them and showing up at meetings. And yeah, I think both levels, bottom up, top down.
Yeah, I guess I would second that. I think it's working together to avoid the silo, because I also think, and I speak for myself, but I think I also got to kind of a place in the process where I was just like, it's too hard, it's too much work, I just need to take care of just me and mine and ignore everybody else and what they have going on. But especially doing, my work with Bismarck Global Neighbors, and seeing just like, again, kind of that realization of, it's not just a me issue, the whole system needs revamping. But I think coming together and avoiding it being like, it's just it's just those immigrants over there that have the issue, or, it's just, the Native Americans saying this, but a lot of that, like all the parties coming together and being like, no, this is a system issue, right? It's not because I'm African or because I'm Native American or because I'm a poor, white person living under whatever. Like, I think a lot of that is things like this kind of breaking down the barriers that we've even set up, and that a lot of that other, like, it's them over there, and it's not a me issue, and breaking a lot of that down and having the conversations, inviting multiple voices to the conversations. Some of that, like us being the ones to reach out and initiate those conversations, not just assuming that will happen without us. But yeah, I think that's a big one, because I think it's happening to a lot more groups of people, just in general, than Bismarck or Mandan would like to recognize. And I think part of moving forward is even amongst the people that it's happening to is breaking that down and being like, no, collectively, it's a people issue, and how do we all come together to work against this, or, to make change, rather, so that it's more fair and equitable for everybody, not just a select group of people.
So talking about initiating the conversation. We have a 12-part series at Sacred Pipe called Know Your Rights, and we talk about everything from discrimination, Geraldine came and spoke, to knowing the eviction process, and then our topic for this month is actually home ownership. And so we reached out to allies and lenders and realtors. Part of our job at Sacred Pipe is to provide a space that's safe and trustworthy, because we know there's a lack of trust within our community, and that goes back right with generations and generations. And so the advocacy work that we do is not only for unhoused or renters, but we try to provide information. Melanie kind of talks a little bit about that. Not having some of those resources and tools and information provided, and so that's a big part of what we do at Sacred Pipe, is provide information and education and bring people in, and where our people feel welcome and can get those resources and have access to them. And so that's our topic for this month, actually.
Thank you so much, ladies. If there's any other thing to add, if there's nothing to add,
I think I would just share, I don't work, I'm not speaking from an organizational standpoint. So thinking about those gaps and working more intentionally as people, and looking at who the experts are. And the experts are the ones experiencing those barriers, those impacts, those living in that, at that moment, whatever that looks like. But not just, like, it's really intentional, right? It needs to be really thoughtful and truly intentional to really be collaborative and build those coalitions, right? And so when we, like, just thinking about who's invited to the space to have this conversation. This is the first time, and so I want to shout out Geraldine, because this is the first time that I've been invited to a space where I have seen a multitude of different lived experiences of walks of life, different standpoints. And so fostering this and creating this more intentionally in our communities needs to happen, because if we're sitting, and being aware of our privilege, being aware of where we're buying our houses, and how is us buying this house going to impact those experiencing these barriers? What is that going to do? But thinking about that, thinking about how are we going to be more intentional with one another? How are we going to see who's the experts, and how can we build these answers together? So, I think about the sisters. You hear about the sisters along the river. And I'll share as briefly as I can. An elder Indigenous lady was a really important person to me, shared that with me one day in a conversation about those three sisters that are along the river. When they go and they find the babies floating down the river, one of them jumps in that river and is pulling the babies up. The other one is alongside the river, helping to care for those babies once they get out of the water. And the older sister, she goes up to see who's putting these babies in the water. So thinking about that nonprofit standpoint, that organizational standpoint, thinking about the people that are impacted. They have the answers. Like, if you look at Canada, Connecticut, I believe it's Chicago, they have lived experience councils. And not only are they inviting those people to be a part of the conversation, they're compensating, they're paying them for their work. So I've been thinking about how we do this more intentionally, more thoughtfully, and really being committed to being aware of our privilege, being aware of who's at this table, how can we do this together, I think is something we need to focus on.
Any question from one? I'm going to take one question from just one. One question, then we are going to close this out. If you have any other question, Bree, she's amazing. I'm putting it on Bree. She'll be answering all your questions when you go back to the office. So please, anybody with a question in the group, we'll just pass the mic to you really quickly. Oh, you guys must have done a really good job tonight. Let's put our hands together for our